Well, hello. Thank you for joining me. My name is Timothy Charles Castleberry. Okay, I'm not even going to do it. I was going to be a fool, but we're going to do the Proverbs. We're going to do, today's the 10th of August, by the way, and we're going to do the morning devotional and the proverb. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about something to start out with, so I'm going to actually brought a piece of paper and a Sharpie, and I wanted to draw a diagram. But I want to explain a little bit first before I do the diagram. So in the past, if y'all been sticking with it for a while and have seen some of the videos, y'all might have heard me talk more than once about quite a few things that are all kind of related, right? We've been talking about wisdom for a long time now. It's what Proverbs is basically for. And acceptance has been a big deal lately, so to accept things, rather they be acceptable or unacceptable, to find acceptance within a given situation or set of circumstances is critical for coping, dealing, and moving on and moving forward or getting through it, right? If we don't accept something, we get stuck on it, right? And so I talked a few days ago about spinning the wheels. You're just spinning wheels, right? But if you spin the wheel, it doesn't mean you're necessarily rolling, right? So they say, let's keep on rolling, or let's roll, the figure of speech. Well, to roll, the wheel has to get traction. You can spin a wheel all day long, but if it's like, think of a car. That's the simplest way I could put it quickly. If you have a car and it's jacked up, to change the tire, if the brakes aren't on or if it's in neutral, you can spin the wheel all day long. It'll spin and spin and spin, but the car is not going to go anywhere. Okay, or the analogy I used before was, if you get stuck in the mud, right, in your vehicle, you can rock the car back and forth and it's slow, but sometimes sometimes the wheel will get traction either at the front or the back, and so by rocking it, you don't dig the hole deeper, and you might be able to overcome by either moving backwards or forwards. Life is real similar. When you get stuck in a situation that's really bad, a quagmire is another name for it. It's what they referred to the Vietnam conflict, right? It wasn't a war or whatever. Technically, by definition, anyways, they called Vietnam a quagmire because it was unwinnable. Now, technically, it was winnable, but they didn't want anybody to win, and it's about money, blah, blah, blah. Our life situations are a lot of times like that, where we get stuck in a situation, and maybe it's winnable, maybe it's not. And the more you dig in and hold your ground, the worse off you are for it, because you might win, you might lose, but the time and emotional, mental, spiritual effort that you put into the situation might be a snare of the devil, basically. Even an animal that gets caught in a trap, oftentimes, they'll chew off their limb just so they can get out and go away. That's a hard choice to have to make, though. How many of us are willing to do something like that to get out of a situation? Are we willing to cut our losses, or maybe create more losses just so we can detach from the situation and move on or move out? Sometimes when you get right into the middle of a circumstance, you have to either keep on pushing forward to get through it, through obstacles, maybe pass through barriers or go over barriers, whatever. Or we might have to say, hey, going forward is going to be the path of most resistance. We need to turn around and go back, right? And nobody ever likes going and backtracking over what they thought was progress or ground that they were gaining, right? So a vehicle that's stuck in the mud, sometimes the rocking back and forth doesn't work. So sometimes you can put a prop in there, a wedge or a piece of wood, or there's a million things you could use, but that extra addition, whatever it is, can oftentimes give you the traction you need enough just to get a push, either backwards or forwards, to get you out, right? And so spinning the wheels, though, if you sit there and just hit the gas, which a lot of times people in our instant gratification society, in our mentalities of we want it right now, we want it yesterday, we're not willing to be patient and wait for things that are better. We would rather maybe make concessions. We would concede that it would be better if we waited, but we were settle for what we can get right now. And so in that mentality, you want to get out of the hole right now. You want to go where you were intending to go. You don't want to be held up. You don't want to be, yeah, what's the word for it? You don't want to be hassled, right? You don't want to have this complication come in, and you had your plans and they were for this, but this happened and now you have to change your plans. Nobody likes to do that, right? To adapt to the situation. So the most forceful, quickest path is, sometimes the worst thing you can do. So if you're stuck in the mud, the worst thing you can do is just hit the gas and put the pedal to the metal and try and, power your way through it. So usually what will end up happening is you end up flinging the mud and the wheel sinks down deeper and you just dug the pit deeper. And in Proverbs we hear about that. They dug the pit, right? Or they dug the pit deep, or they are in the pit. Okay, so when your wheel of your vehicle is stuck in a mud pit, the worst thing you can do is hit the gas hard and dig the pit deeper, because then you might have to call the tow truck and get help to get out, right? So sometimes all it takes is somebody to help push you out while you're hitting the gas, not too hard. So yeah, these are all analogies. I used it before, I use it again, I'll use it probably later on in the future. But spinning the wheels was the point that, cycles is important. There's a cycle of life, birth, life, death. Everything has its cycle, right? The seasons have their cycle. Nature has its cycle. That's a big bee, or a big wasp. My coffee has a cycle. I have to put the coffee in the machine. I have to put the water in there. I have to put the filter. I have to hit the button. And I have to wait for it to pour up. Then I have to pour it in the cup. And I have to add the things I like in there. The coffee isn't just ready to go. But today we'd rather pay $5 for a cup of coffee that I paid cents for. Same thing. Maybe not as strong. Maybe not fufu from Kenya or Colombia or wherever, Maybe it's not some Java, mocha, laka, blaka, waka, who cares? I just think, to me, the culture we have is we pay for convenience, we pay for quickness, and it generates a mentality, right? And so one example I use often about the we need it now, the fast food mentality we have, is baseball. Maybe you guys aren't as familiar with American baseball if you're not from here, but basically you got like 9 innings. You get 3 outs per side, right? One team bats while the other team fields. Pitcher pitches, tries to make the guy miss. 3 strikes, you're out. Blah blah blah. Whoever scores the most runs. Okay, you got 4 bases. Home base is where you hit from. You want to go all the way around the 4 bases, get back home. You touch the home plate, you get a score. Yeah, I mean, it's a real simple game. It's complicated, but it's very simple, and it can take an extremely long time, especially if it's good pitching. It's hard to hit a ball going that fast, even for professionals. But so my point is, though, is baseball is like really old, one of the oldest sports we have here. That's why it's the national pastime, right? Well, what is a pastime? It's to pass the time, okay? Back in the day, you used to go to the ballpark and take your family and have a whole outing, a whole day of an outing, and you would enjoy your home team playing whoever they're playing, right? Or that kind of deal. Culturally, it was a cool thing, There's nothing evil about putting a piece of wood to a ball and trying to hit it really far and running around the bases. And, I mean, sports can be culturally evil if they're idolized or over glorified, but it's a child's game that men play and make millions and millions and millions of dollars playing. So I don't want to go into all the negatives, but my point about baseball, and I'm not the biggest baseball fan, by the way. Super hot, sorry. If I sniff, it's to get air into my brain. If I breathe heavy, sometimes it's because it's hot. So, anyways, baseball is something that used to take a long time, many, many hours. Even today, in today's standards, they've done things to speed the game up. But our cultural mentality is, if you don't have 15 points, and lots of home runs and fancy show, then it's boring. Except for the traditional people appreciate the game, right? Now, what I find interesting though is back in the old days, you would have maybe a couple scores and that was it. Now you can have very high scores, and we always want a bigger, better deal. We always want it faster, quicker, cheaper, you name it. And it's this instant gratification culture we have now. Back in the old days, it'd take you all day to cook a real meal, and everybody would sit around the table and share the experience together. Now we're lucky if we can hit up McDonald's and get a cheap burger and fries and go sit around the TV and watch it, or we all do our own thing. It's kind of sad, really. And it's, baseball's a perfect analogy, because back in the day it was a whole family event. You would go and it would be a cool thing to do for a long time. Now you go to the game and you watch it and people are like sleeping in the stands. I mean, you got like, we had a thing here in Texas when our team was going to the World Series, which is the championship, a few years back. Around the time when we've been a horrible team for like decades, and then finally we're starting to do okay. I don't really care because I don't like baseball, but it was funny because they showed a whole bunch of pretty young girls, and there's like maybe 5 or 6 of them. And sometimes they'll the camera will like zoom in on people. A lot of times it'll be pretty girls, which I find kind of exploitative, I guess. But so there's these young pretty girls, and the camera's just sitting there looking at them, and they have the big jumbotron, and they're so caught up in themselves they don't even know that they're on national TV, and they're on the big jumbo screen at the stadium. And they're all sitting there with their little phones taking selfies and selfies and selfies, and it's like selfie of the selfie, like, hey, take a picture of me taking a picture of me. It's like, and they're doing it for a long period of time to the point where they don't even realize everybody's watching them. And it was the epitome of our culture. They're at a baseball game to watch the game and enjoy the time, but here they are spending all their time on themselves, with themselves, for themselves. And well, maybe the game's too boring. An hour and a half baseball game's way too long. Before, you could have like a 5-hour baseball game. You can still have it every now and then now, but maybe I'm over talking this, but now baseball's not as popular as it was back 100 years ago, because we'd rather have basketball, which is like non-stop, back and forth, back and forth. 130 points is not outside the realm of possibility. You know I just think it's sad the way that we've come. So yeah, I'm gonna talk forever about this if I keep going on. So to get back to the cycles, and I want to draw a diagram, but in life, the quick, easy path is usually the wrong one to take. The instant gratification path is usually the ploy. It's usually the bait to switch you from the intent that is most good and planned. I mean, God has a plan for your life, but are you willing to wait for his plan to come to fruition? Are you willing to wait for him to do his thing, or would you rather do your thing? And you got this, it's your life to live, right? But are you living it for you, or are you living it for God? We could all do more, so I'm not trying to get anybody feeling like, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to stop doing this. I'm not trying to come at you like that. I'm just saying, look around you and look at the people and see how they are, and don't hold it against them, but just look that we've been conditioned this way. We have industry and profiteering and governments and everything under the sun is literally working against us to be good and godly and to follow the plan God has. Society would rather you follow the plan of what the status quo is, right? Or to be a productive member of society, they would have expectations, and the world would have you do these things or else, right? The medical industry would have you follow suit with what they recommend or else, right? And so these labels, it's like they want to conquer and divide. Well, the way to divide us the most is to get us all selfish and thinking of ourselves. And how does it suit me? How does it serve me? How can I get what I want, when I want it, how I want it? And if not, then how can I use or exploit or cooperate with somebody else to get what I need, quicker, faster, better, stronger, all those things, right? At some point, we have to come together and cooperate, but for the greater good of everybody, not just the individual. It says love your neighbor as you love yourself, which says you should love yourself, but you should also love your neighbor. It didn't distinguish who the neighbor was, or what the neighbor was into, or what the neighbor did, or what the neighbor believes. I'm just saying, if we're even called and commanded to love our enemies, your neighbor might be an enemy if you're a godly person. I mean, maybe they're a devil worshiper. Does that mean you're not supposed to love your neighbor and your enemy at the same time? No. But telling somebody else how to do what they need to do usually is the least effective thing. Leading by example is the best way. Living love. Love is the most persuasive force on this earth, and maybe even in heaven, I would say, right? So, like I said, 16 minutes in, I could talk about this forever. So I'm going to get to the diagram so we'll have time for the Proverbs and prayer and devotional, but I'm encouraging you guys to reevaluate your life. Reassess your situation. Maybe after this video, with the things that we learned from the wisdom of the scriptures, it's Solomon's Proverbs today, maybe these things can be applied to your assessment, right? Before you can apply it to your life and put it into action, you have to get the understanding, right? We can get the knowledge, then we have to understand the knowledge, then we have to apply the knowledge with understanding accurately and appropriately in a timely fashion. Then we'll have wisdom for it, right? The wisdom, you can have all the knowledge and book smarts and street smarts in the world, but if you don't use it when the opportunity comes, then it's not really wisdom. It's only wisdom and wise when you take the knowledge and apply it accurately, appropriately, and in the time when it's most effective. So keep this in mind, because I'm not saying you're going to be able to fix your situation overnight. I'm not saying you're going to be able to fix your condition overnight. I'm not saying you're going to be able to fix your brain, your heart, your spirit. These things are not quick solutions, right? We can apply practical solutions, and then we can begin to chip away and make a difference, and we can begin to have a better way, right? But until we are willing to look at it and then be honest with ourselves and honest with God, until we're willing to reassess our situation. It might feel one way. Things are never as bad as they feel, okay? That's a lie that your heart will tell you, is, oh, this is the worst day of your life. This is the worst thing in the world. Oh, this is the end of your world. This is the end of your life. Your life's over now. No, it's not. It's not over till it's over. It's not over till the fat lady sings, right? And she's warming up sometimes, but not everybody who warms up gets to go out and, the show must go on for us. But if you're honest with yourself and you reevaluate your situation, your feelings will take you in one direction, right? And so usually they'll make it feel horrible, and it might be horrible. But if you let your feelings rule you, then you're at a detriment. You're at a very negative place, because we are creatures of passion and habit. We're human beings, right? And God created us to have these feelings and passion, and to to have life, right? Life is full of its ups and downs. It cycles, right? And so as things cycle, you have to manage through as best you can. Lean on God, not your own understanding. Lean on His wisdom. Fear the Lord. Have a healthy respect. And be honest with yourself. Don't over exaggerate how bad things are, because there's always somebody that has it worse than you. Always. And in your situation in life, you might not have it as bad as you think, right? Because we can overthink things too. I'm guilty of all of this that I'm telling you guys. So I'm not perfect. I'm not 100% where I would like to be in these areas, but I can tell you what's worked for me and what has helped me, and where I've come to a level of understanding and acknowledgement and application and wisdom. And I'll share it with you, because I hope that it could help you too. All of you. I love you guys and girls. So if somebody always has it worse than you, sometimes it helps to focus on somebody else other than yourself. Get out of yourself, get out of your feelings, get out of your thoughts, and focus on somebody else. That's a good way to get a fresh perspective, because if you're in it too long, if you're in the shit middle of it for too long, it can be overwhelming, okay? Now, pardon my crude analogy, but I've given it once before, I'll give it again, and I'll try and watch my language, but forgive me. Right now I'm going to speak freely, so if you don't like the S word that I just said a second ago, you might want to turn it off or go somewhere else, but you're going to miss out on some good truth and wisdom. When in life, and this will get right into the diagram and we'll get to what truly matters most, is just the scriptures, but in life when we have problems, okay, I've had a whole life of problems. Some of them are my own fault that I caused, some of them were things that I could not change, some of them were things that I could change but I was too stuck to think outside of myself to begin to work on the issues. Some of them are environmental, some of them are behavioral, some of them are psychological. Most of them all root in the spirit though. And when you're not living right, it's real hard to get right. And I guarantee you, every time you try to get right with God or get right with your life situation, the devil will come at you hardcore, full force. Being a Christian is the hardest thing you can do. So trying to walk the walk and talk the talk, you will be met with adversity at all sides. You will be encompassed round about by your enemy, as David would put it in the Psalms. So in life what we do is we have problems, right? Everybody has problems. Everybody has issues. Nobody's perfect. Nobody has the perfect life, no matter what it looks like on Facebook, okay? Or no matter what it sounds like coming out of their mouth. People all have their secrets. They all have their skeletons in the closet, and they all have their history and their past. They all have their desires, right? And anyways, so if we have problems, the thing that I see most common with myself and with others is that we have a tendency to take all of our problems, and pardon my French, but shit stack them. We stack them up like a big pile of dung. And so when we do that, we take one problem here, one problem there, one problem over there, this problem from there, and this problem over here, and we just put it into one big pile, right? And when we put it into one big pile, it becomes a mountain, right? Or I refer to it in a very crude analogy as a shit burger, okay? Nobody likes to eat shit burgers, guys. Sorry. Even if you're vegan, it doesn't matter. Nobody likes those burgers. And so when you stack it up and then you make it into a burger, nobody likes to eat the shit burger anyways. And when you make it such a big stack, you can't even take a bite of it, and the only way to get rid of the burger is to eat it. So I just think to myself, the simplest solution in this scenario is that rather than stack it all up into one big pile, keep it separated. I have this problem over here. Okay, well that's that problem over there. I have this problem over here. Well, that's that problem over there. Don't merge the two together or you have a big problem, right? You could take two little problems and stack them and turn it into a big problem. Okay, well, do you want to deal with little problems or big problems? Oh, I don't want to deal with any problems at all. Well, yeah, no kidding, man, but it's life. You're going to have problems, and you're going to have to deal with them, because if you don't deal with your problems, they will come back to haunt you. You can't run away. You can't run away from Judgment Day. You can't run away from your soul. You can't run away from your past. You can't run away from trouble. You can't run away from the devil. You can run, but you can't hide, right? So you can run, but it'll catch up with you, and it'll be worse for it. When it catches up with you, it's going to be worse. You can hide, but there's nowhere you can hide from God. There's nowhere you can hide from the devil and his minions. So there's no escape here. The only escape is death, and that's not an option. Okay? We all have that appointment. It's not up to you when that appointment comes. And if you do make it up to you, that's a very selfish thing. So keep it separated. Don't stack it. Then you don't have to eat it. Okay? There's better burgers out there, even vegan burgers. There's even better burgers out there than the one of excrement. So keep it separated. Don't stack all your problems, because then it becomes overwhelming. Once you get overwhelmed, you get bogged down, like spinning your wheel, you get hunkered into the mud. Then you need the tow truck to come, but when are you going to call? What if you don't have service? What if you don't have a cell phone? I mean, what are you going to do? You might have to walk a long way to go get help, who knows? So, like I said, I could keep talking about this for a long time, and it's near and dear to my heart, because this is something that life is hard. Living is the hardest thing you'll ever do. Dying is easy. It's easy to die. It's hard to live. So, I say that all the time. I mean it. Okay, so let's go. We talked about problems, and we've assessed situations, how we can identify problems. Let's talk about solutions. Solution is keep it separated. The solution is prioritize what your problems are. And I just gave this advice last night. I'll give it to every single one of you also. If you have I said reevaluate your position, reassess your situation, and all that earlier. So with this instance, when you keep your problems separated, okay, if you have a big stack, which more than likely, if you guys are having problems, you have more than likely stacked them up into one big burger, okay? Now, take that burger apart. Everybody, I think, would probably relate to ordering something at a restaurant or fast food or whatever. You order a burger. Oh, I said I didn't want pickles. It's got pickles on it. I said I didn't want mustard. It's got mustard on it. Okay, you can take it back and complain, or you can open up the burger and take off whatever you don't want. Okay, well, open up your excrement burger and separate it. Take the component parts and separate them all. And once you have it all laid out in front of you, then look at your problems and say, well, this is a financial issue. This is an emotional issue. This is a blah, 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 relationship issue. This is a marital problem. Whatever it is, this is a spiritual stronghold I need to cast down. Whatever it is, look at it and assess it and make a priority list. You don't have to make it on a piece of paper, but you can. That's helpful for a lot of people. But prioritize your problems and look at what's the most important problem. And by important, I mean which one is the biggest problem that's affecting your life most severely right now. Take that problem and then work down. What's the next biggest problem that, if you were to remove this biggest problem that's affecting you most severely, what would be the next most severely negative problem you have to deal with? Go all the way down the list till you get to, my favorite show isn't coming on for a long time. That's not really a big deal, but some people might have that on the list. Who knows? Well, prioritize these things and look at it and see what is something that you can actually change or do something about. What is something that it's out of your control? If it's out of your control, put it on a new list of things I cannot change or control. Because if it's in your power or control to do something about it, you should. If you can't do anything about it, then sitting there dwelling on it is going to be overwhelming. You'll get depressed, you'll get upset, all those things. I've talked about this the other day. But separate what is something you can actually take action for or against and make a difference, and then look at the ones that you cannot change, and we'll deal with how to appropriate and cope and manage through that at another time. But the things you can't change it. Accept it and move on. And the things you can change, prioritize them. And I say this: attack the most important one that's affecting you the most up here, and take the littlest, minimalist one that's easiest to deal with down here, and do both at the same time. That way, when you meet in the middle, life is a lot better, okay? And you're not going to change these things overnight. More than likely, you're probably not, and it might take some hard thinking. It might take some thoughts and feelings that aren't good and happy and foo-foo, and stressful, but deal with it, Don't sit there and pretend like it doesn't exist, or don't pretend like, oh, there's nothing I can do, blah, blah, blah. Do whatever you can, and then you can have an excuse to complain later. But if you're just going to sit there and complain, nothing will ever get done, okay? And if nothing ever gets done, I hate to tell you this, but more problems are on their way, guys, okay? So the sooner you start being proactive and you start taking the bull by the horns, that's what we say in Texas, The sooner you grab it by the horns, the more you can steer it the direction that it needs to go to be going in a better direction. So, with all that having been said, this is something I came up with when I was in high school, okay? 15 years ago, however long it was. And I call it the crossroads. We all have moments in our life where we have a crossroads. And I'm not talking about Robert Johnson, sell your soul at the crossroads so you can play the guitar badass. I'm talking about, like, in our lives we have critical junctions of experience, decision, and future outcome, consequences. And so, I'm going to turn it around and, ooh yeah, we're halfway through my video time. 30 minutes, 44 seconds. So I brought a piece of paper, and I think I'm going to take it to the wood because camera's getting super hot. Oh. Alright, so the cycles of crossroads, right? Hang on. Okay. I don't know how to do this. I need a... Okay, so I don't know how well the audio is going to come out because I'm having to hold this really weird. But we all have crossroads, right? So if this is us, and we're moving forward in life, right? Well, we get to, what do they call it, a fork in the road? I know this isn't a devil pitchfork, guys. Don't try and decode me. Illuminati confirmed. No, but I usually only give it two choices just so it's easier. But if you have option A and you have option B, okay? In life, you start out, and let's say this is when you're a teenager, right? And we can all go back into our teenager years, or maybe our early 20s, or our college days, or whatever it is in your life when you started to get, you know, thinking you already know everything. So you start out here, and you move forward in life, and you get to whatever it is, a critical decision. And it's usually, you know, I'll just say drugs, because that's an easy one, right? I smoked a lot of pot, maybe I shouldn't have. Sometimes I wish I hadn't smoked any at all, you know, blah, blah, blah. But there's other worse drugs than pot, you know. I don't even have to give you all the laundry list, but you can get the gist, okay? So, maybe even alcohol. I've went to prison over alcohol, so I think I spelled that right. But let's just, how about alcohol's better, because more people can relate and have access to alcohol than hard drugs. But, okay, so let's say that you go in B. Option B would be not to drink. I always take the right-hand path as good, right, and godly. And then the left-hand path, even in, and I'll cover this actually, the left-hand path, I'll cover that in the Games of Thrones 2 video. But in life, usually left is bad, right is good. Okay, Jesus sits on the right hand of God, that kind of thing. So in life, let's say we get to the crossroads, which is the decision-making point. And when we decide, we can either, let's say it's going to the party to drink alcohol, say our freshman year in college or whatever. I didn't go to college, so I'm just making this up as I go. But you get to a point where, okay, well, I'm not going to drink. I decide not to drink. I got to focus on my grades, right? And so you'll get over here to the next nexus or the next plot point on your mapping through life, right? Well, that's the right choice or the good path. And I'm not saying you can't drink. I'm just using this as an analogy. Okay, well, the left-hand path, which is the bad path for your life. Okay, I chose to go to the party. I chose to drink. So now you get to the point where, A, for alcohol, right? You've gotten into the alcohol, and so your path moves forward. We didn't go this route, so we're not going to continue on this line. But here, we'll get to the next plot point, right? And so I say we have the fork in the road. We can either go right, once again, or we can go left. Now, in this instance, if we chose to go to the party and get the alcohol, okay, maybe we never drank before, maybe we couldn't drink back in the day. And now that we have, we're going to let it all hang out, because it's like, wow, I got drunk, I got wasted, I had a great time. Now, next time party comes, it's like, oh yeah, are we going to have some more of that alcohol? Okay, well, you can choose right. No, you know, I had a good time, but I've got other things to focus on. Okay, well, this would have taken you down here to the next plot point. That would have been a better direction, right? Because you're trying to get as far in the option tree, which let me draw here. In the option tree, you can only go so far left and you can only go so far right until you exhaust all the options, right? So it's a kind of a weird thing, but you're going to go like choose your own adventure, navigating through your path in life. At the end, though, everybody ends at death and where you go after death, right? So getting to there, you could take a path of least resistance, and the further over you get here to it, the better off you are. Or you could take a path of most resistance and end up snaking your way through, right? So that's what I've always said. If you get off the path, it's a lot harder to get on the path than it is to get off. The further off you go off the path, sometimes the harder and longer it can take to get back onto the path. So here, I chose left. Now when you choose left, you create a cycle for yourself, okay? Now this actually started the cycle, but it was a small circle, right? I had one choice, I chose it, now I come back. The thing is time keeps marching on, okay? So although this was a little circle, by the time you come back around, you're here now. So this actually turns into this. Okay, so now you chose left again. So by the time you choose this, you go through your drinking cycle where you have the outcome and the effects of what you just chose. Okay, so by the time you get to the next crossroads, you can either choose this or you can choose that, but you're going to go circling here. Okay, now I'm going somewhere with this, so don't get lost in the chicken scratch I've got going on. But this was a left and that was a right. Now, if you notice, and if I had a bigger piece of paper, I could keep doing this all day, and each cycle would get larger and larger and larger until you get off the map, off the chart. So my point of bringing this up in the fashion that I am in this diagram, and I literally came up with this in high school, is the cycle starts small. It doesn't feel like a cycle. Then it gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger. It gets easier to go on the path that you know, okay? It's hard and it's scary to say, well, I don't know what it's like not to drink. I'm addicted to alcohol. I'm an alcoholic. But I'm really not an alcoholic. I just like to drink, right? So, not an alcoholic, not an alcoholic, not an alcoholic. But by the time you get to the big circles, well, at what point do you look at your life and say, wow, I'm an alcoholic. I need to deal with this. Or, I'm an alcoholic. I don't want to deal with this. I'm going to drink more. You get to a point to where the longer it takes to go full circle, you're just spinning the wheels of your cycles of addiction or your cycles of emotional whatever, right? Y'all plug in whatever variables you need to apply this situation to your life to understand what I'm saying. But when you get to a point to where your cycle might take so long, you can't actually get off of the path of the cycle that you created for yourself. I made this choice right here. Now I've got this consequence, this consequence, this consequence, this consequence, this consequence, this consequence. Now take a whole separate paper and put it on top, and this is somebody else's life that's affected by what you're doing in your life, okay? These cycles start to match up and link up. You'll have other drinkers that you can connect with, right? Or you'll have your family over here who's trying to help you, and they can't get into your cycle. They can't help you from the outside. You won't even let them in anyways. And sometimes you let them in, but you get to a point here where, oh, this messed up here, so get out of my cycle and go back out there, because you can't help me. I'm the lost cause, whatever it is. You end up with issues to the point to where, if you say at this point in life, and I'll start over, but if you're at this point in life, right, and say this is a really large cycle, and you've gotten so far into the cycle, so where when you get back to the next crossroads, because this is all moving forward at all times, when you get to the next crossroads, say for once you actually choose the right path, okay? Now your cycle is still going to be big, but it's not going to be as big as the cycle it took to get there. So your cycle will shrink. If you choose the right path again, then the circle shrinks. If you choose the right path again, the circle shrinks. If you choose the right path again, the circle shrinks. Okay, you choose the wrong choice, well then you get another circle, and I mean I think you get the point of what I'm saying, right? It gets hard sometimes to get back to where you want to be. If you really want to be over here, well, if you have a cycle this big, you're not just going to go from point A to point B. And oh, hey, that's the cycle, the dot, you know. No, you're going to have the smaller one and the smaller one, and you're going to have crossroads along the way that you have to choose. And if not, then you could go back this way again. So there's my chicken scratch. That's the story. I'm sticking to it. But you've heard me say before, how long have you been living wrong? And then all of a sudden, what, a year ago you got saved? Or you got saved, 15 years ago, but you've been living wrong for 14 of those 15 years, and now you want to get right, and then you want to go out there and tell everybody else? Really? You want to tell everybody else, oh, you shouldn't watch TV, or oh, those Illuminati rituals for halftime Super Bowl. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Don't eat pork, it's unclean meat. Oh, you've got unclean spirits. Like, oh, the devil's running your life, like, no, worry about your own salvation with fear and trembling. Work it out with God, between you and God. And then if he puts on your heart to share these things, yeah, do it. But don't get overzealous telling everybody else how to do them. Who are you to tell somebody when you've been living wrong for 14 years when you knew right for 15? Blah, blah, blah. Y'all get the point. So if you've been living wrong a long time, you might be off on one of those cycles. It might take you a while to get back on track. But the crossroads are very important. We all have our crossroads in life, and we all make bad or wrong decisions at times. But what do we do about it, right? Well, fix it. Start to fix it. Work on it. When you're in the middle of one of those cycles, sometimes there's nothing you can do to get back on the right track. Sometimes you have to wait till you get back to a junction. And that's just a psychological, I actually have seen in medical books that there is a psychological diagram, and there's a name for that and everything. I didn't know it till I was doing some study in psychology, but just like a couple years ago I found the diagram and chart, and it blew my mind that I came up with that on my own in high school, and that's actually in the practice of medicine and science. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Proverbs Chapter 10 with 18 minutes or less to go. I hope this helps, because what I'm trying to basically express to you guys and girls with that is that you can never have gone so far off track and made all the wrong choices in the crossroads in your own life. You've never gone so far off the path of right and good that you can't come back over. You've never gotten so far off the track that God can't save you. Or even if you're already saved and you've been living backslidden and wrong, you could be the prodigal son or daughter that God's waiting for you to come back, and he's going to run and meet you wherever you're at. So trust in God and do right. When you have choices, I always say usually the hardest choice is usually the right choice. If it was easy, everybody would do it. If it was hard, that's why it's the path less traveled. Okay? There's a highway to hell and there's a stairway to heaven. Think about that. Now that's pop culturally irrelevant, but it sounds cool. And I think there's some truth to it biblically. But okay, let's get some wisdom of Solomon, not just some smarts of Timmy. But if this can be applied to your behavior, your decision-making process, to your reflection when you go to re-examine your life, and when you examine yourself and reevaluate and be honest with yourself and be honest with God, and you want to get right and correct, don't beat yourself up for the past, just acknowledge it. And now, how can we fix that? How can we address that? How can we move forward? How can we accept that, or how can we put closure? How can we put it to rest, right? Because some things you can't fix, you'll never get over it. All you can do is get through it and give it to God, I say. So, Proverbs Chapter 10, verse 1. A wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is the heaviness of his mother. Okay? You'll make your parents proud if you're wise, if you make wise choices, and this applies directly to those cycles. How many of those cycles have we all been on where at the end of the day, not only did we let ourselves down, usually we care the least about ourselves, that's why we make those stupid decisions, but how often do we hold the people we love most dearly hostage by the choices we make, or by the lifestyles that we have chosen to go down the roads? How did it feel when my dad's sick and dying that I had to go to prison, knowing he might die while I'm in there? That breaks my heart still. Knowing that when I got arrested for the DWI and had to go to prison for it, that I had to stop teaching the karate class to the special needs kids. How did I feel letting those kids down? Because I made a dumbass choice 3 times. Well, 2 times actually, but beside the point. Make your parents happy. Be wise. Choose wisely. A foolish son or daughter is the heaviness of the mother. We keep these people we love heavy-hearted, heavy-minded, fearful, sorrowful, you name it, and when we're not wise. The things we do affect the people around us. So, treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivers from death. It's usually wicked treasures that we feel like we're profiting from out of instant gratification and satisfying needs or satiating lusts. At the end of the day, though, it's not profitable, and it leads to death and the paths of destruction that we just saw. The Lord will not, in righteousness, though, choosing that right path, righteousness, choosing the right paths on those crossroads will lead to life, and it will deliver you from death, literally. The Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to famish. Okay, famish is, will not allow the righteous to go hungry. Okay, famish, when you're famished is when you're starving. I think it said Esau was famished when he came back and sold his birthright for a bowl of soup. There's more to that story, but the Lord will not suffer the soul of the righteous to go hungry. What's our soul hungry for? The Word, the bread of life, Jesus. But He casts away the substance of the wicked. Okay? The wicked, from a soul perspective, have no substance. Verse 4 says, He becomes poor that deals with the slack hand, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Okay, we're talking about spiritual substance, so if we piggyback spiritual poverty or spiritual richness, then if we take the slack hand, that's what will be dealing us the poor outcomes in our lives, and that chart is what I'm talking about. The hand that's diligent, though, makes rich. So do you want to be rich in your soul and in your spirit? Do you want to be rich with wisdom? Well, then be wise. Choose wisely. He that gathers in the summer is a wise son, but he that sleeps in harvest is a son that causes shame. Okay, so gathering in the summer is a wise son, but he that sleeps in harvest is a son that causes shame. If you can do something about it, you should. Okay, summer isn't usually the time to do the gathering. It's usually in the harvest is when you gather, so that's an odd idiom right there. But if we're in the summer right now, it's not the wisest thing to come sit out here in 111 degrees and do this. But, spiritually speaking, this is the hand that's gathering, and this is the wise son that's wanting to share the wisdom with you guys. Now, sleeping in the harvest, though, which is the time when it's easy to do it, okay, if I'm going to come out here and be diligent doing this in the summer, when it gets cooler, do you think I'm going to be a lot more pleasant about doing this? And when it gets harvest time, which is usually in the fall, harvest, well, if you're sleeping during the harvest time, how much more likely are you to be sleeping in the summer when it's harder to do the job? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, sorry. Verse 6 says, Blessings are upon the head of the just, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. So violence usually is not just. You got blessings for just being just or having justice. You get wickedness for violence, and it usually starts in the mouth and then leads to actions with the body. The memory of the just is blessed or blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. People will remember somebody who's blessed and just and meek and humble and wise. But if you're wicked, no one's going to remember your name. You will be infamous if anyone does, and you don't want to be infamous and remembered for wicked deeds. The wise in heart will receive commandments, but a prating fool shall fall. He that walks uprightly walks surely, but he that perverts his ways shall be known. If you walk uprightly and you choose the right path on that chart every time, nobody might ever know who you are, or nobody might ever know the hard choices you've made to be right and to do right and to come to righteousness and to be wise. But if you make those wrong choices, a lot of people are going to know. And you can hide it only for so long from yourself or from your family or from your friends, but eventually it will all come back to haunt you. If you pervert your ways or go to the left in that analogy, and I keep looking at the paper over there if you're wondering why. If you pervert the ways from the right path, then yeah, you will be known. The ways shall be known. He that winks with the eye causes sorrow, but a prating fool shall fall. The mouth of a righteous man is a well of life, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Okay? Think about desert dwellers. A well could mean life or death, literally. So the mouth of a righteous man could be a well of life. Violence, though, if you're talking about violence, that usually is what covers the mouth of the wicked. Hatred stirs up strifes, but love covers all sins. Love your enemy, love your neighbor, love yourself, love your God with everything you've got. If you hate things, the only thing the Bible tells us to hate is evil. If you hate other things, even hating evil stirs up strife, though. I mean, I hate Monsanto and GMOs and chemtrails and corrupt governments and Illuminati and Luciferian. I hate all that stuff. But the more I think about it and dwell on it, the less I feel in control or empowered to do anything about it. So I trust in God, and I choose to live love and not sit here and spew hate about the things I can't change anyways. Verse 13, in the lips of him that has understanding, wisdom is found. But a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. If you understood, you wouldn't need to be corrected. The rod is of correction. Wise men lay up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. Okay? Wise men lay up knowledge. Laying up knowledge is stacking it, like I said before. You can stack your knowledge, but until you use the stack, it's not wisdom yet. Right? But the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. So do you want to play with fire? Because if you play with fire, you'll get burned. Your mouth is... Anyways, verse 15, the rich man's wealth is his strong city. The destruction of the poor is their poverty. Dwelling on your situation and where you've been and how you got where you are. It can either be a wealth and a strong city. You can build it up, right? Through experience, you fortified along the way. Your experience has made you who you are. And yeah, you would have made different choices if you could have, but you didn't, so now you make the best of it. And in hindsight, look at how it created your character development. The destruction of the poor is their poverty, though. Like, you're impoverished spiritually when you only dwell on your destruction. Like, oh, woe is me. My life's been so rough. My kid died. I went to prison. My dad died. Blah, blah, blah. I could go down a whole sob story for you guys. But I don't live that way. I don't think that way. I don't feel that way. There's a lot of people that do, though, and that's their poverty. That's why they're spiritually bankrupt more often than not. And that will bankrupt you emotionally, mentally, psychologically, physically, period. The labor of the righteous tends to life. Okay, I got 5 minutes. I gotta hustle. The labor of the righteous tends to life, the fruit of the wicked to sin. Do you focus more on life and good things, maybe hard things, but priorities that are going to be beneficial, or are you more focused on how to make sin happen, or how to justify sin, or how to acquire the things that will make your sin gratified for your flesh? Verse 17, he's in the way of life that keeps instruction, but he that refuses reproof erreth. So You're in error if you won't receive correction. The way of life is keeping the instruction that's given to you from people you can trust. He that hides hatred with lying lips, and he that utters a slander is a fool. I know some fools right now that are fellow believers that utter slander without even knowing it, and they lie with their lips to hide the hatred that they have, claiming that they love unconditionally and they embody Christ's love. That's sad because they're fools. The Bible says so. In the multitude of, and I've been guilty myself, so I'm not exempt of my own critique. In the multitude of words there wants not sin, but he that refrains his lips is wise. The tongue of the just is as choice silver, the heart of the wicked is little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but the fools die for want of wisdom, or lack of wisdom. Fools die. The blessing of the Lord, it makes rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. You won't have any sorrow or grief with the blessings and richness that God gives you, but if you acquire it with your own slickness or your own devices, you might have some baggage that comes with your success and your money and blah blah blah. It is as sport to a fool to do mischief, but a man of understanding has wisdom. Talked about sports earlier. It is as sport to a fool to do mischief. Wow, are they keeping score? That's a curious thing. I know people like that, right? The fear of the wicked, it shall come upon him, but the desire of the righteous shall be granted. As the whirlwind passes, so is the wicked no more, but the righteous is an everlasting foundation. Oh, I got a cool story about that. There's an old man that used to go whack this tree with his newspaper every day. He'd read the newspaper on the porch, he'd go out to the middle of his field, and he'd whack the crap out of this tree with the newspaper. People said he was crazy. And it ended up being that there was a tornado or a whirlwind that came through that farm town. And sure enough, a great majority of the oldest trees in that area were uprooted and destroyed, except for that one tree in that guy's yard, which was out in the middle of the yard and had no kind of wind blocking or anything. And that tree stayed and maintained because of the roots. And when they asked the guy, hey, how did that tree survive the whirlwind or the tornado? He said, well, I go out there and I whack it every day with that newspaper to let it know that I love it. I give it some tough love, and I'm trying to wake it up, you know. I thought it was really cool, and we need to be rooted in a firm foundation of righteousness, because that foundation is everlasting. The whirlwind passes, so is the wicked no more. Okay, when a tornado comes, if you're not on a good foundation or under a good foundation, you might get taken up with the house that was built on the sand. As vinegar to the teeth and as smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to them that send him. Wow, so vinegar can hurt your teeth sensitively, and smoke burns your eyes. And the sluggard, you don't want to send them to do the job that you need to get done. You know, you want your best and your brightest. So the fear of the Lord prolongs days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. Okay, go down those bad paths in that chart and see how quick you live when you're dying too fast. See how quick you will die when you're living too fast, right? Fear the Lord, and that will prolong your days. Honor your parents, that will prolong your days. God will extend your life if you follow what He tells you, because those are promises. So He might reschedule your appointment for death. I could put it that way, because He's the boss, right? The man upstairs. The hope of the righteous shall be gladness. Less than a minute. But the expectation of the wicked shall perish. The way of the Lord is strength to upright, but destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. Non-believers are workers of iniquity, not believers in sin. The righteous shall never be removed, but the wicked shall not inhabit the earth. And these two verses I have blocked off, so I find these most important. The mouth of the just brings forth wisdom, but the froward tongue shall be cut out. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked speaks frowardness. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time to come together, and I'll make my words short so I may decrease that you may increase. Thank you for the wisdom and the blessings of your love and mercy and tender kindness. And in Jesus Christ's name we pray for the help to do the things we've learned today. Amen.